we not doing that anymore? Great. I love it. I'm a big fan. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Normally I do this from out there, but I have to do double duty today. So let's sing together. We always start with a song. You got to do when the Spirit says do. And then we're going to change up that word. We're going to sing, we're going to dance, we're going to do whatever comes to mind. I invite you to rise and bow to your spirit, and let's sing together. When it comes around, yes, laughing. Here we go. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. To sing, oh Lord, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout, oh Lord. Got to shout when the Spirit says shout. To clap
Good morning. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church, and we're so glad to have Brett Carson back after his fellowships. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi Morris, and Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. We are so glad you're spending time with our congregation today, and really grateful that all of you who can be here are here in the different ways that we have folks. There's a crowd out on the patio on this beautiful day. We're glad to have folks at home, and those of you here in our sanctuary. For those of you who are visiting us this morning, welcome. We hope all visitors will fill out a visitor card either through the website or here on campus. And some of you are noticing we're getting caught up on getting new name tags for folks, so we hope if you're missing a name tag, you'll stop by the visitors table and also let them know that you need a name tag because you plan to be back, which we would love to know. Next week, we have our Connecting You and MDUUC class for those of you who are new and wanting to learn more about who we are and what we do together. This is the 102 class, which is for those who have been through our first class. So please see Reverend Rodney after the service if you'd like to learn more about that opportunity. Today is the first Sunday of the month, so we will have a chance after the service today for those who are willing to make the commitments of membership to join today if you're interested in doing so. So please find me or a board member after the service. Our congregation has many ways to connect, and I want to mention that today after service we will have one of our in-the-moment, just-in-time connect groups, and we will be, you can see Michael after the service if you're interested in participating in that. It's a chance to talk with other people about areas of interest and to have a chance to get to know some people more today. We also have postcards and letters on our table outside in relationship to the election and encouraging people to vote. So Reverend Rodney will be out there at that table after the service and can tell you more about that and how we can connect today. I also want to mention that next Saturday we will have a virtual service for our friend actually of the congregation, Dave Shoemaker, and that service will be at 4 o'clock. Because his family is spread across the world and finding a time that works was a little bit of a challenge. But next Saturday, completely virtual service at 4 p.m. If you are in need of a listening ear, special care, or financial support, please see Rodney, Michael, or I, because asking is a gift you give to our community, and welcome to this beloved community.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Oswald, a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he and him. Welcome to our service. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community. We begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. This community exists because of the time, talent, and treasure that our members and friends share. Please talk to any board member or minister about how you can connect and contribute. We are so glad to have you with us, and we hope you are keeping safe. A few announcements. While we're no longer checking vaccination statuses, our expectation is that those who are inside are vaccinated. Thank you for honoring this commitment to keep one another safe. Today, there will be opportunity to get a paper copy of the survey we are doing to help shape this year together. We will also have someone available to show you how to take it online. Thanks for taking the time to let us know your thoughts. Check out the just-in-time section in the Friday email for one-time ways that you can contribute your time to benefit our wonderful community. And mark your calendar for two things. First, next October 16th is our next congregational forum to continue the conversation about the 8th principle for a potential November vote. And last but not least, our biggest fundraiser annually, which is always the first Saturday in November, the Bid for Love annual services auction. And this year on November 5th. And welcome. It's good to be together.
So our service today is about democracy, which is a system of government in which everyone should matter. So as we greet each other today, let's say to each other, "Good morning, and you matter." Let's go and greet each other.
Way to go. Invite you, there it is. We invite you to sing the words of our invocation. You'll find them on the screens. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place.
Good morning. I'm Leslie Baxter. She, her, and hers are my pronouns. And let's make this chalice lighting a little interactive today. I want to know who's worried about the state of democracy. Show of hands. Out on the patio? Yeah, me too. Okay, show of hands. Who can fix it? Okay, everybody's hand should be up. Whether you're worried about it or not, we're the ones that can make democracy vibrant. Democracy is a tool, right? And if you don't use it, you might lose it. Right? I've been a lifelong voter, and even before I could vote, I was participating in democracy. 1972, I was 13 years old, and I was door knocking for McGovern, even though both of my parents voted for Nixon. So you can participate, right? And you should. How do you participate? Well, the basics are register to vote and then vote. But there are so many things, little incremental things that you can do. Make sure that your friends and family are registered and vote. If they need a ride to the polls, get them to the polls. It's easy. Little steps, right? A lot of us have that MAGA uncle, right? Just make sure that 2 of your friends or family members vote and cancel him out. Super easy, right? Little steps. And I don't want to hear, oh, we're in California, it's blue, it's all good. It's not all good. You can always find an issue or a candidate that needs your support, right? Andy's in the front row nodding. Joan Kerr and I door knocked for Ben Thoreau the last election cycle. He was running for sheriff. There's an issue that we could really lean into, right? He didn't make it this time, but I got to have deep conversations with my neighbors about an important issue, and we moved the needle, and next time, we might actually win the seat. So little incremental steps, right? Whether it's local or whether you can make the effort, and I know some of us can, to go to a swing state, or even do remotely cards and phone calls. See Reverend Rodney and go fill out the forms on the patio. Little incremental steps, because democracy is important, right? And it's part of our core values as Unitarian Universalists.
Okay, I'd like to invite those who are young and young at heart to come forward. And if you would like to, I encourage you to stay standing for this time for all ages. You're going to stand all the way up there? Okay, great. Michael, have you seen Eagle?
Our new bird friend?
Yes, he's been hard to find these days. There he is.
Eagle, where have you been?
I'm just so busy trying to get people to understand about voting, trying to get everyone to vote because it's important. Every time I see people, I'm trying to get them to think about the importance of voting.
Well, that is good of you.
Nothing to do with goodness. I have to do it. I'm a bald eagle.
Glad you can admit that. Some male-identified people can't. Does voting grow hair?
No, I'm the national bird, the symbol of our democracy. If people don't vote, well, wait. Look. There's some people down there, kind of short-ish, some, yeah. Yes, they can vote.
Sure. On what?
Okay, let's see. How many of you think eagles are a better national symbol than, say, a turkey? Raise your hand.
I'm not sure that's fair, as turkey isn't here.
Well, I don't have time for socializing. I can't be inviting everyone here. I have to keep people voting. Let's try it again. Okay, you think of the question if you didn't like mine.
How about, which do you think makes a better pet? Hamsters or rats?
Okay, we're gonna vote. So, if you think it's hamsters, come to this side. Over here. And if you think it's rats, come over here. Hamsters, rats. Now, audience, if you could point. Hamsters or rats?
We've got some split voting here. I think hamsters won that one. Okay, that's good. But we do need to keep moving people to vote.
Okay, here is a moving question. Which would you rather have for president, a dog or a cat?
Neither. Have you met me? I don't like pets.
Sometimes it's the lesser of two evils, as they say. Dog voters to the right.
Okay, dog voters
cat
over here.
people to the left.
Cat people over here. Is that a political statement? Because, like I said, I don't like either choice.
This reminds me, speaking of choice, next week is Blessing of the Animals. But in this case, this voting case, it might not matter if you wanted to support an independent ferret or a chinchilla. In some cases, though...
Are we voting on dinner now? Okay, I think you got this crew in order. I think they understand about voting. But just remind everybody that you see for the next month that their opinion counts, their vote counts, and that matters. Now, did someone bring a chinchilla?
I'd like to invite you all to sing our children and youth to their activities.
Truth into the world. May your
Good morning, beloveds. Hi, I'm Michael Macias. I'm the intern minister here at Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church, and my pronouns are they and them. I am bringing to you the words of Sharon Savota this morning, who could not be with us as she is handling a bad case of laryngitis. What does democracy mean? The dictionary says it's a system of government by the whole population, or all the eligible members of a state. Another way of saying that could be a system in which all are represented and all can participate. One way we can all do this is by voting in November. One thing that I've noticed about myself when it comes to voting is that I've had a tendency to worry most about national issues and candidates and less about folks running for school board, city council, and other local government offices. Today, I'd like to make the case that we should pay close attention to local candidates because we are all impacted. As a civic reporter and a parent of a few elementary school-age daughters, not me, I've been struck by the platform this election season by school board members about, quote, protecting kids and keeping them safe. On the surface, those things sound good. I want to protect my children, and I want them to be safe. Then when I dig in deeper to find out how the candidates are proposing to do that, I find out that they're proposing things like resource or security officers in schools, shutting down discussions of gender expressions, and sanitizing the school curriculum, working around teachers' unions to focus more on students. Then I have a new set of questions. How does teaching students a portion of the truth constitute an education? If we don't care for the people teaching our children, who is going to protect the children at school? How does denying the existence of gender fluidity or diverse gender expression help our children who may be trans, gender non-binary, or part of the LGBT community? I recently got invited to attend a children's Latinx drag queen story time at the Lafayette Library, and I was told there'd be protesters. We should all go to that, by the way. I didn't believe there would be, but sure enough, there were two groups of demonstrators. One group held signs saying things like, "Love is louder," and "Drag queens are fabulous storytellers." The other held signs saying, "Protect our kids, stop grooming them, and boycott the library." I learned that everyone was there to protect children. One side wanted to protect the rights of children and family to show up as their whole authentic selves and meet people from diverse backgrounds. The other side was called to action by a county school board candidate to protect children from grooming. I followed up by asking how a story time would groom children, and one interviewee, willing to go on record, looked back at me with her eyes wide open and filled with what looked like fear, and explained that the storyteller was a trans person. So I didn't exactly get my question answered. After the event was over, I spoke with my 15-year-old person, whom I'll call Lori. She uses all pronouns, but concealed her identity for her safety in the community and in her own family. Although she hasn't claimed transgender as part of her identity, she told me that having this event in the community helped her feel seen, represented, and know that her existence mattered in the community. This is significant, as 80% of trans youth have considered suicide and 40% have attempted it. When I asked the librarians how she felt about potential library boycotters as a result of the event, she said only this: "I hope they change their mind. The library is for everyone." Today, as we consider democracy, may we continue to strive to let people be seen as their authentic selves, replace our fear of things, people, and identities we don't understand with curiosity, decipher between feeling uncomfortable and unsafe, make sure that all are welcome, and vote. Come, let us worship together.
We invite you to rise and body your spirit. Let's sing our opening song, Where It the sacred torch of truth has lit by inspiration taught. Where is our Holy One? The mighty host respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our holy land? Within the human soul, wherever free minds truly seek with character the goal. What is our paradise in inspiration's tide, wherein we hope to see arise 10,000 years of right.
We've come to the part in our service where we uplift all of the joys and sorrows that this community holds that are much too large for any one of us to bear alone. I'm asking Michael to start by lighting a candle of joy for this community altar that was created during Breath and Spirit yesterday, I believe. It's a holy and sacred space where we can set our intentions, lay down our burdens, or elevate our joys. As you feel called to do so, we invite you to add to this community altar. And Nasa Matt is lighting a candle of sorrow in the loving memory of my dear Aunt Kendra, who passed away September 20th. Thank you to my MDUUC community for all of your love and support. I'm also asking Michael to light a candle of sorrow for all of those impacted by Hurricane Ian. Let us hold all of our siblings in love and prayer. And finally, I'm asking Michael to light our two final candles, the first representing all of the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts, and the second, a gentle reminder that we are the keepers of love and justice makers in this one imperfect but important world.
We're going to invite you to join in our meditation. This is actually a litany, and in traditional litany style. I'll sing it for you once. You sing it back, and then we'll go back and forth with the narration. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
for the selfishness that sets us apart and alone.
We will give ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit,
We will give ourselves and each other. We begin again in
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. I was born by the river in this little old tent. And just like this river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it is. It's been too hard living. Oh, my, I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the clouds. It's been long, I know, it's been a long time coming. But I know what change is gonna come. Oh, yes it is. There was a time I would go to my brother. I asked my brother, will you help me? Will you help me please? He turned me down. And I asked my dear mother, oh, I said, Mother, I'm down on my knees. It's been a time that I thought, Lord, this couldn't last for very long. But somehow I thought I was still able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. yes it is. Like I said, I went to my brother. I asked my brother, will you help me please? He turned me down. So then I asked my dear mother. I said, mother, I'm down on my knees. Oh, it's been a long time that I thought, Lord, this couldn't last very long. But somehow I thought I was still able to carry on. It's been a long time. Been a long, long time coming. But I know change is gonna come. Oh, it's been so long, a little too long. But a change has gotta come.
Good morning. I am Linda Russell, a member of your Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm very excited about today's message, as we have been watching the elections most recently and move into the midterms that are going to set a tone for what we will be dealing with for the next few years. I'm so appreciative of a faith that encourages not only an understanding of what's at stake every time we vote, but offers many opportunities to be a part of the process. Especially poignant this year is the political division in our country, but for the first time for me in my adult life, I am keenly aware of the impact on voting outcomes in other countries. Very concerned about the political waves in Britain, Italy, Iran, Ukraine, Russia. In this church community, we have many who are affected or who have family or friends who are affected by oppressive governments. Our community stretches beyond our walls, as does our caring. From his poem, Prayer Ballot, Luke Stevens Royers writes, "Marking my vote is like kneeling in prayer, because neither will accomplish anything right away, but the purpose of both is to remind me of my deepest hope for the world I'm trying to help create." As you listen today, please reflect on what you experience as democracy, mindful that it is not the same for everyone. And consider what you are hoping to create by being here. The ushers will now come forward. And now, please join me in the dedication of our offering. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
Okay, good morning. My name is Janet Hoy, and I was asked by Reverend Rodney to be thinking about kind of my place in this most recent sort of democracy struggle. And I use that with some hesitation because I think many of us are very concerned about the state of our democracy, small d, and are worried about the status of things nationally. And I think that creates concern for lots of people. And I've been trying to think of sort of the things that I've been involved in. So I have worked in political campaigns before, but not terribly recently. And in the most recent past few years, I've been working largely with a nonpartisan organization, the League of Women Voters, on issues that have to do principally focused on elections and candidate forums and that kind of stuff, but also on some social justice issues, what I think is really a part of the value-based beliefs that I really have. So I think I'll start with my work with the League because that's stuff I'm doing right now, and I think is an important role for me. So I think you all know that we have 7 statewide ballot measures on the ballot this coming November. And I'm working with a partner in the League to present what we call the pros and cons of each of the ballot measures. So that simply states the ballot measure, gives the fiscal impact, talks about who supports it, who opposes it, and reasons why. And then the financial backgrounds, who's backing the supporters and who's backing the opposition. And it's such a really thorough way to understand what the propositions are because some of them are a little confounding. And when you look at the language of the proposition, or in the case of, I think it's 31, the one about the flavored tobacco, it's almost kind of antithetical to what you think you should be voting on and how you're voting on it. So I've so appreciated the process of understanding them more fully. At the end of that, we will make available the League's position on each one of the propositions. And I've been so heartened by the degree of analysis and thoughtfulness and thoroughness that the League has gone through in determining which propositions they would support, which ones they would take no position on, and which ones they were neutral on. And that's a little bit of a nuance there, but I'm so intrigued by how the League has really put together the thinking behind the position on each one of the propositions. So that's a big initiative for me right now. Secondly, I'm working on candidate forums. I have 3 or 4 of those coming up. And some of you may know that there are a few school board elections in our general area that have become somewhat fraught and a bit contentious. And one of them is one that I'm going to be moderating. So I thought a lot about how will I maintain a sense of transparency and openness and good information sharing, not from me, but I'm the moderator, so sort of managing all of that, and allow people to feel heard without things crossing a line that becomes kind of a personal attack. And I think we all know across the country, some of these issues and forums have become kind of heated. And I think it's super important that we remain focused on how can we talk to each other in productive and informative ways without putting each other down. And I guess the final thing, and again, this is another League thing that we're working on, is a presentation on mis and disinformation. I think we're all pretty aware of how we tend to go to media sites, whether that's TV or few of us still print, but mostly sort of through social media, how we receive our information, whether that's political information or COVID information or other kinds of information, and how we often go to sites that just give us what the site thinks we want to hear because of the algorithms involved in how we make choices on what sites we're going to go to and get more information. So I think there is a much greater interest these days, down to the middle school and high school levels, of giving people information about how to be more critical users of different media. And I think that will be an important thing go forward, certainly in advance of the election. Really important that people know where they can go to get good information. Much of this for me is built around a sense of a need for, on many fronts, of social justice, that the ability for people to choose their elected officials, to have the vote, to be able to make decisions on who to vote for is critical to the continuation of our democracy. And there are politicians out there who don't really care if the elections happen. They don't believe that the elections are valid, and they don't care if we really vote for them or not. If the result is something that's not the way they want it, they're just going to claim that it was fraudulent, when we know after many months of analyzing this stuff that they really are quite valid. And that would completely invalidate each one of our votes. And that is the, in my view, sort of the foundation of social justice. If we cannot be heard through our democratic process, if our voice is lost because of people who are in power and want to stay there, or people who are not in power and want to get there, if they can literally rig the system so that they can get and remain in power, then me being able to vote is meaningless. So working on democracy issues writ large, being focused on providing information to people that is good information, timely information, information they can use in a way that is not filtered by partisanship, I think is a very important part of maintaining our democracy. Additionally, I've been involved a little bit in some of the Braver Angels work. So many of you probably know, but Braver Angels is a national organization that works to bring people together from sort of both sides of the political spectrum, sort of the reds and the blues, to talk to each other about important issues that are very top and center, front and center for many people, like abortion and criminal justice issues and a whole range of things. And I have to say that even people whose opinions I don't agree with, when I heard them state their case, I was moved. Not every time, but many times. I was moved, and I was drawn in to listen more. Can we take that kind of compassion and connection and transform it more into kind of our everyday interactions with people?
Before I start this morning, I'd like to take a moment and just acknowledge and recognize the Jewish high holidays and holy days, and particularly Yom Kippur. And I also want to take a moment and acknowledge the recent death of my beloved colleague, the Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs, who was a national leader in our movement and who wrote "We Begin Again in Love," which we use so often to mark this day in this congregation. So I just take a moment today and ask that we hold Rob and Jan and their family in this particular holiday season. I remember that moment. I was in my kitchen at what felt like the height of the end of the world, by which I mean, of course, early 2020. And I remember I was listening to a report about all kinds of things that were happening in the world. There were COVID numbers. Our democracy was in a great state of disarray. And then I heard the stock market report, and the stock market was hitting new highs. And I thought to myself, how can this be? Our world, our country is falling apart, and yet the business world is so happy. That's an oversimplification, I understand. But now, in the spirit of Yom Kippur, I forgive myself, not for the oversimplification, but for my naivete. And when I was a young researcher in my 20-something, learning that someday we would have majority-minority states, and that in fact California was predicted to be one of the first, and in fact, ta-da, here we are. In those days, we used that fact as a reason to support correcting educational inequities and economic inequities for people who were Black, Indigenous, and people of color. With no majority, we thought, as the process played itself out, they would be in leadership, and they wouldn't have to keep doing what the highest-ranking Black legislator in our nation, the Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, says all older Black people were taught to do. He's talking about his generation. Pick the lesser of two evils to keep the agenda moving. Today, I forgive myself and others for our short-sightedness about the power of power and the power of greed. Now, I had another moment in the kitchen again. I listen to the news a lot in the kitchen. And it was this summer. I was listening to the facts about the extent of voter suppression, all the different things that are being done to suppress voting. And I just wondered how leaders could justify taking action and positions to keep people from voting. It was just against everything I could imagine. And I wondered that from within, of course, my own frame, which said that our biggest shared goal is always democracy. Again, in the spirit of these days, I have to ask for forgiveness for myself, for I did not understand. I really, truly didn't. The democracy as our shared goal was what was now under direct attack. I have a confession. I have not much wanted to pay attention to these midterms. There are probably some others that would join me in that confession. I want to believe that it isn't going to make much of a difference, that nothing that I do is going to help because the nation is so divided. And so today, I must forgive myself for being taken in by the morass that passes for facts today. Facts, or the lack of them, votes, or the lack of them, is what these midterm elections are all about. We are getting fat and stupefied on the diet of lies we are all getting fed, all of us, some of which we're taking in through osmosis, and we better pay attention and start sorting some of them out. The biggest lie, one of the biggest lies, may be around this idea that we are so divided that nothing is possible. That is something that fuels a very specific interest group in our nation. We are feeling division, that is true, and yet it may be because of a very specific agenda which is protecting the interests of the super rich, even if that means that part of that agenda is replacing democracy with some other system, which people are actively working in this election to do. A fact. We all need to decide if we will be defenders of democracy in the here and now, the very soon, and the longer term. Now, in the here and now, let's consider some things. It may not seem like the stakes are that high as they have been in other recent elections. And yet the threats against our democratic system are actually increasing, not decreasing. In this election, the one that's going to happen in a month and a little bit, people in our nation are openly running for office under the banner of being against democracy. They see that as an electable position today. They are emphasizing that we are actually a republic, not a democracy, and that is the point, not to empower all, but rather to empower the rightful heirs of the nation. In this election, some are running as Christian nationalists, part of a new evangelical movement to take over government, education, the arts, and more. In this election right now, candidates are citing as their heroes people like Joe McCarthy, calling for a new effort like the one that he led to root out those and get rid of those who are teaching pernicious things about race and about gender and about equality. And throughout this nation, so many are working actively to keep people from voting this November. In the New York Times podcast series, The Run-Up, reporter Astrid Herndon has spoken to many would-be voters and has been covering elections for several decades, and looks to those who study elections to look at the deepest trends behind these midterm elections. In the first episode of the podcast, The Guardrails, Herndon talks about the exit of mainstream religion, which has been a moderating force in the politics of this nation, and the obsessive entrance of those who are working for this Christian nationalism. If anyone out there is saying to themselves, this is not an appropriate topic for Sunday morning, please know that it is the topic for many Sunday mornings in those pulpits, and that one of the opponents, one of the names for the enemy, one of the names for what they are fighting against is democracy itself. Author Frances Moore Lappé is known for her book, The Diet for a Small Planet. I think it's one of the first books I had as an adult, bought a used copy, in which she advocated for a plant-based diet long before that was a thing. But her most recent book is this one. She did it with Adam Aitchen, and it's called Daring Democracy. It was the UUA Common Read last year, and somehow we didn't really do that in this congregation. We ordered the books, but no one had the energy to engage, so we never really read it. Those books are outside on a table, and I'm going to suggest that we might want to have that common read, not right now, because that's something we can't be doing in the very soon, but the near soon. I'll invite you to take one, take it home, and I'll be scheduling that read coming up after the elections in November. You see, change is going to come. It's been a long time coming. Change is going to come. The question is, will we be a part of that change? What is the root of what we're facing? Lappé says it's a development of what she calls the one-rule market, which the only goal of the market is to return the highest return to the existing wealthy, in other words, the top 1% in the United States. Do we remember the Occupy movement, anyone? Now, my need for kitchen forgiveness continues. In addition to taking a dim view of human nature, this current concentration of power has created a spiral of powerlessness that has become this anti-democratic mindset. The beginning of this cycle, Lappé and her colleagues traced to the early 70s, when particular advocates of a free market declared war on government regulation and public policy. And as the super rich amassed more money, they had the ability to fund more things to continue this agenda. They have funded multiple think tanks. They have created whole new higher education schools, especially in business schools, where these ideas are propagated. And they have also, as we know, developed new ideologically based media types that are now dominating much of our country. Lappé notes that the Koch brothers network now spends 2 times more than the Republican National Committee spends on candidates. That network has 107 offices worldwide, to Linda's point about democracy being imperiled throughout our globe. 107 offices worldwide with focuses on youth, Latinos, and veterans, and strategies that pit especially white voters against Black, Indigenous, people of color to keep them blaming one another. Which gets to that discontent, that great divide that I mentioned. Herndon and LePay both agree on one statistic. They both cite it very early on in what they did. No one's happy with our state of our government right now and how it's working. 85% of people polled in this nation consistently, over and over again, say that things are not going well, and that's on both sides of what's called this political divide. LePay says it's not so much a divide as a divider installed by some of the wealthiest Americans to ensure that we keep the focus of our economy on not restricting the ability of the richest to become richer. And let me add here, I want to say this very clearly, that having a lot of money is not the issue. It is, as LePay points out, the concentration of power and what it has bred. For there are many who are using money for good and to keep and bring people together, but there are many who are not. So I mentioned, we need a strategy for the short term, and then a longer term. And in the short term, we need to counter all the efforts to repress voting and get out the vote. And we need to be educated at the local level, because that's where this change has been brewing for many, many decades, at the local level, at those school boards, at the library boards, the things that we all know intellectually but maybe aren't taking the time to research. We need to mobilize the vote of others, asking whether our family members, our parents, our children, our grandchildren are voting, our neighbors. In the short term, we have a lot to learn about what's happening with our democracy, and we need to make a pledge not to let our active citizenship end with the casting of that vote. We need to continue to make our voices known, just as those who oppose scientifically and factually based theories from being taught make their voices known increasingly, and increasingly feel empowered to do so. We need to choose what LePay calls civic courage and keep going at it. Change is going to come. The question is, what change? What LePay says is that we are living in a world with a culture of blaming and shaming, othering and apathy, where people have forgotten their own power and agency. And what she's working for is a culture where we have a dispersion of power, transparency, and mutual accountability. We need to stop blaming one another and saying it's because this is the problem. We're talking about pronouns, or we're advocating for Black lives. We need to understand that it's a much more insidious agenda that is using these positions around human rights as a pawn, and it's effective because some of us agree. The thing is, we need to educate ourselves. This agenda is based on exclusion, and our faith calls us to support agendas that are based on inclusion and uniting people. And every faith-based initiative, including those of William Barber III in North Carolina, which is one of the states that has been most radically affected by these new politics, look at how we can build broad-based coalitions to overcome what our 19th century theologians would call this form of evil. This form of evil, this division, is endangering democracy itself. That is not rhetoric, that is truth. We have only to look at the facts. Now, back when I was that idealistic young adult, it never occurred to me that when this democratic shift started happening, it wouldn't be about doing democracy differently. I actually wrote a paper in theological school about how we can do democracy in all different ways. But in some places, LePay points out, those who oppose inclusive voting are also doing away with many forms of democracy, including many local bodies, by just giving those powers to the state if the party in control shares their agenda. Those who call themselves radicals for capitalism, like the Koch brothers, believe their ends justify the means, as Jane Mayer traces in her very frightening book, Dark Money. Take a breath, everyone. This stuff is not fun. I get it. I sent a text to a colleague last night while working on this sermon. I said, it's a bad sign when instead of working on my sermon, I'm thinking about whether I should adopt hamsters per the New York Times story on mass abandonment of small animals. I did actually go online and look at a few hamsters. I'm sorry, Michael, it's true. It's hard, and we are all still trying to recover from what happened between 2016 and 2020 that made us realize our democracy was endangered. and yet we cannot afford to have any kind of false confidence. The New York Times Herndon said, "We are politically unmoored, we are radically disoriented by everything that has been happening, and yet those who have been organizing for big change are ready to move in on our apathy." Change is going to come. It's a long time coming, right? They've been working for a long time. We who would have democracy as a religious value, stated in our actual current form of purposes and principles, can't afford to turn away during these times. We need to pay attention. We need others to pay attention. We need to get people's attention. And we also need to be part of undoing this with whatever part of our energy we can devote to this. LePay and coalition leader Reverend William Barber remind us of the power of coalitions where we can support one another and not allow ourselves to be divided, for we are the faith of inclusion, not exclusion, the faith of democracy, not taking away the right to vote. Now, Leslie Baxter and Janet